Good evening, Greenwich. Good evening to you too. There was a man who asked the very august and very knowledgeable English economist Keynes who actually really understood about money. He thought for a moment and said, well, I know three people. There's a colleague of mine at the university, there's a student of mine, and a junior clerk at the Bank of England. Tonight, I give you a fourth person, my esteemed colleague and friend, Bernard Lietaer.
This is the recipe of what has been going on over the last 3 or 5 years. In central banking terms, the chairman of the Fed is known as Helicopter Ben. You know why that is? There were 13 articles written about the deflation in in Japan during the 1990s, and 7 of those were written by Bernanke. So he really has focused on that issue. And in one of the 7 articles, he had found a solution. If nothing else works, you send the helicopters over the cities and throw dollar bills through the windows. That will stop deflation. Anyway, my story on the euro is a rather personal one because actually, accidentally, I ended up being involved at the very beginning of all this. And how this happened is quite innocently through a book which I wrote, which was published in 1979, which had been written in 3 languages actually. This is the French version, and that's the title of the English one. It was about Latin America, and it's the only book that actually forecast the major debt crisis that happened in the early 80s, and which I had forecast as saying, this is the beginning of a series of these things. There is a structural problem in the global monetary system, and the first place that will blow up is Latin America, but as the flaw is structural, we'll find it in other places over time. By the way, for the little history, we've had enough of those since. We have had 425 systemic crises in the countries, so according to the IMF, since 1970. That is more than 10 per year, that a country goes somewhere in trouble because of a systemic problem in the monetary domain. Just after I finished that book, I got a call from a headhunter offering me a job at the Central Bank of Belgium. So I decided to accept it because I thought it was the finger of destiny. I mean, I just had written a book announcing a systemic problem in the monetary domain, and here I thought was the time and the place where actually I could see whether I could do something about it. So I did that. I accepted the job. I was 2 weeks in that job when these 2 gentlemen, President of France, Giscard d'Estaing, Helmut Schmidt from the Chancellor of Germany, who had in his period a big love affair. They had regular meetings, and in one of their meetings in Bremen, they announced something that said, Europe needs a zone of monetary stability, okay? And I remember in the central bank, in our central bank and all the others, what the hell did they mean? You know, okay. The next thing was that Giscard d'Estaing went to Paris and talked to the Banque de France and said, do something purely European. While Mr. Schmidt went to the Bundesbank and said, do something that doesn't upset the Americans. These 2 ideas are not compatible. So in Basel, at the Bank of International Settlements, which is the club of the central banks, when they have a problem of this type, they create a committee. And they put in charge of that committee, the chairmanship of the committee, a country that doesn't have the illusion of running the world. Belgium qualifies. So that's how my colleague from the Foreign Department, who chaired that committee, and myself, as a technical, I was in charge of the computer and the planning and the organization departments of the central bank. I was dealing with the technical part, he was doing the diplomacy. Let me immediately say that all the credit should go to Francois Hevard, my colleague, for the simple reason that we can invent tonight 3 monetary systems, but if you sell one in your life, that's the rare thing. So he is the one who sold it. Now, here's the result. Well, you know the map of Europe. I'm showing it this way, just to show you what really the Eurozone is. The light blue areas are parts of Europe that are not part of the Eurozone, but are part of the EU, the European Union. So all the dark blue ones are the countries that are part of the system. There has been a big love affair around that in Europe. This is actually the way Poland presented the entry of Poland into the the Eurozone. So they were looking at it as a major breakthrough and a deeper integration of Europe. I'm showing this picture because the first time I met this gentleman, Paul Volcker, in my central banking days, I'm not short, but he's a good head taller than me. And he always smokes a cigar, right? So, and he dominates the scene kind of spontaneously, like you see here. And I remember the cigar ashes, wondering they will flow in my right eye or my left eye. And his first question was, what the hell are you Europeans about with this equi thing? That was saying hello, all right? So it was interesting. The next episode, for me, happened in the same place, in the Bank of International Settlements. I had lunch there with the then Secretary General of the Bank of International Settlements, and he said, Bernard, I read your book on Latin America. What are you doing in a central bank? Nobody had asked me that question while I was in Belgium. But I told them the truth. I said, I am in the central bank because I thought it was the appropriate place to find out whether it's possible to do something about the system. And he said, but Bernard, you don't understand. We exist, the Bank of International Settlements. Every central bank in the world exists. The IMF and the World Bank only exist for one purpose: to keep the system going exactly as it is, not to improve it. That sank to me, and I suddenly understood why, and any one of the proposals I had been making during my period at the central bank, of anything that would be out of the box, was immediately blocked. So there is truth to this. And the truth is, in fact, from a banking viewpoint, it is true, it cannot be improved, right? Just imagine that Microsoft has the government enforcing the monopoly for Microsoft. I mean, can you dream better? And the government itself will buy the services from you. In other words, not only the government doesn't use the priorities that it has, but it actually enforces the monopoly. So that's what happens. I returned to Brussels and resigned. Okay? They didn't ask me why. I didn't tell them. Now, here are the things that went well in the Euro process. The convergence system went very well, actually surprisingly well. The simultaneously current replacement has been the biggest monetary operation from a logistic viewpoint in history. I mean, you're talking of, 12 countries at the same time, the same day, at the same hour, replacing all their currencies in one block. All right? I mean, that's never happened. And I can say that because I wasn't involved. All right? That happened much later after I have resigned. There are 3 mistakes that are not easy to resolve. The first one is